start NFL Live with the developing story out of Seattle. Adam Schefter here. What can you tell us, Adam?
Hannah, earlier today, the Seattle Seahawks reached agreement with Mike MacDonald, the Ravens defensive coordinator, on a 6-year contract. The deal is done. He will be the Seattle Seahawks' next head coach. And essentially, they will go from having the oldest coach in the league to having the youngest coach in the league. MacDonald was quite popular on the head coaching interview tour. He interviewed very well in Tennessee, Carolina, where he was a finalist for the job. He was a finalist, obviously, in Seattle. The Seahawks were willing to hold off their search until after Baltimore season ended, whenever that was, even if it meant the Ravens going to the Super Bowl. But they lost on Sunday. They spoke with him yesterday, flew him to Seattle today. Washington also reached out. He spoke to them. But obviously, Mike MacDonald made the decision to go to Seattle and now become the youngest head coach in the NFL.
And, of course, now that leaves just one opening. Adam, back to you in a bit for more on the Commanders. But we have the pleasure of visiting with Damien Woody and Andrew Hawkins today. D-Wood, how do you like this? Youngest head coach in the NFL, brilliant young defensive mind. Do you like the fit?
Yeah, and I love the fit for a variety of reasons. Number one, you look at the Seattle Seahawks defense, they've invested a lot of resources, whether it be draft picks or trades, to really upgrade that unit. And now you bring in a young, defensive mastermind in Mike MacDonald. And we saw the work that he put in with the Baltimore Ravens. They were a historic defense this past year. And so I think the fit really works in their favor. Then also from this angle here, Hannah, look at the division that they're in the NFC West. You got the Los Angeles Rams with Matthew Stafford and Sean McVay. You got the San Francisco 49ers who are on their way to the Super Bowl. That right there, you need to have a defensive mindset to kind of offset what you got going on in the NFC West right now. So I really like the fit.
Yeah, I completely agree. I mean, you talked about this being a defensive-minded organization, and you have someone who, A, comes from a first-class organization going to another first-class organization, one that has been a model of consistency in the NFC, which is very important, and it's a culture that they like. So much so that when they decided to part ways with Pete Carroll, he stayed on as an advisor, and you don't do that for someone you're trying to truly turn the page on. Also, to Woody's point, when it comes to defending these teams that are in this division, you look at what McDonald's defenses did against offenses who run that system. You look at the Texans both times they played them, the 49ers, they've had success against the Bengals, the Dolphins, even the Lions, who run some variation of it, were held to 6 points. So if you're going to go defensive-minded head coach in this day and age, it better be one who can stop that Shanahan tree system. Otherwise, you're probably wasting your time. So I think this is an incredible hire.
All right, I want to go back to a point that you just made. Pete Carroll, at least for the time being, D. Woody, is still sitting there as an advisor in the Hawks organization. If you're MacDonald coming in, how does that sit with you?
Yeah, listen, Hannah, personally, I don't know how comfortable I would be having a legend. And Pete Carroll is a legend in Seattle for everything he's done up there. But listen, Mike MacDonald, young coach, he has everything in front of him. He's done such a fantastic job with a first-class organization in the Baltimore Ravens. And so, listen, I might not personally like it, but I think, Mike MacDonald, I don't think his ego is going to allow him to feel any type of way with Pete Carroll being in an advisory role.
Certainly, some young head coaches have really advised from having their older and wiser counterparts around. So that's the best case scenario. But let's talk about the other side of the ball, Hawk. What do they need to address immediately in terms of their offense?
I mean, it's immensely important that he makes sure he chooses the right offensive coordinator, number one. But what is their question at quarterback? I mean, if you look up at most of the openings from this year, they are teams that don't have quarterbacks, or even the ones that, were rumored to maybe making a move, where typically they didn't have the player they needed at the quarterback position. So I think Geno Smith has been incredible. Do I know if he's a long-term answer? I don't. That'll be one of the first questions that Mike MacDonald has to come through and figure out. And if he's not, what is your plan to getting your guy for the future that will elongate your tenure, hopefully as much as it did for Pete Carroll?
Well, we shall see how this all plays out. A lot of work to do. 8th Ravens defensive coordinator in team history and the 5th to become an NFL head coach. So That is settled. Something that is not settled, and that would be the situation now in Washington as we take a look at this group of new head coaches that have filled vacancies so far. And we see that lone job there down at the bottom. We know Jim Harbaugh is going to be introduced, by the way, tomorrow with the Chargers. And then there was one, Adam. So what's the latest in our nation's capital?
Well, Hannah, the Washington Commanders have cast a wide net, and obviously they were supposed to talk to Ben Johnson. He canceled on them while they were en route to Detroit yesterday. They didn't get the chance to speak with him. Obviously, Bobby Slowick decided to remain in Houston on a contract extension. Today, Mike MacDonald, who also is a candidate for the Washington job, opted for the Seattle head coaching job. And so that leaves you right now with three known candidates in Washington: Dan Quinn, the Cowboys defensive coordinator; Anthony Weaver, the Baltimore Ravens assistant head coach; and Aaron Glenn, the Lions defensive coordinator. Those are the guys who really are still out there and in play. Eric Bieniemy was the offensive coordinator there last year. Don't see him being in the mix for the head coaching job. The team also could decide, hey, we're the last team now to have an opening. Do we want to go consider anybody else? Is that even possible? That's also an option. They're having discussions this afternoon because really you'd like to get an assistant coaching staff in place, but there's no rush right now. There's nobody they're competing with for a head coach anymore, so you might as well take the time that you need to make the best possible decision on an organization that already was quick out of the gate to hire Adam Peters as its general manager. They struck early and fast. That was the guy they wanted. They got their general manager. So there's no need to rush into a decision at head coach until they feel like they're entirely comfortable, which they haven't been to date.
Of those available names, we didn't see Bill Belichick, right? We didn't see the aforementioned Pete Carroll. I didn't see Mike Vrabel on that list. Guys, ideally, who would you like to see coach that team, Hawk?
I got to go with Mike Vrabel. I mean, when you look at what Mike Vrabel was able to do for the Tennessee Titans and establishing a culture. Now, I get that in the end, he probably saw things differently than the GM they put in place, and that will be important now that the Commanders have their GM in place. But Mike Vrabel is an incredible coach. I think we all kind of sat back and said, wow, this was a dumb move by the Tennessee Titans when they let go of him because we think so highly of him, and we thought that his recruiting would be long and extensive. Here is the Commanders. They have no one that they've fallen in love with. Mike Vrabel is still available. To me, it's a no-brainer, to be completely honest.
Well, Hannah, I hate to sound biased here because Mike Vrabel was my former teammate in New England, but I think Mike Vrabel would be fantastic myself. I think Mike Vrabel is one of the smartest, best leaders that we have out here. And Hannah, when you guys put up that list of coaches, you know, it's funny because all those guys were defensive coordinators. All of those guys. So I know in the era of offense that we're in, it's all about who is the best leader of men. Who are the guys that can galvanize an organization and lead a group of men out there? And to me, Mike Vrabel should be at the top of the list as far as guys who can come in and build a program, you know, change a culture.
Yeah, they're going to have a high draft pick. They're actually going to have a lot to work with. And by the way, Adam Peters, the GM, he used to be a scout for the Patriots, as you know, D. Woody. He was there with Vrabel and under Belichick for 6 years. It all comes back to the Pats, doesn't it, D. Wood? Somehow. I don't